Welcome to Wayne's World and Kelly. This is now the 37th episode. Unbelievable. You know, they say the average podcast lasts less than 3 podcasts. So I think we're breaking through that barrier. And Wayne started a new hair treatment. So how's that going so far, Wayne?
The results speak for themselves.
I'm just kidding. Made that up. But we have a great guest today. I met Jeffrey Marcic 4 years ago, I believe it was, somewhere in that time frame. And he hasn't aged a bit, but I have. So, but I was at a conference with my co-founder of LGC, James LaGreca, was speaking, Jeffrey Marcic, and some other person who I don't remember. But that day in Florida changed my life because I met these two guys and I went, wow, these are two of the brightest guys in Florida. And I need to know these guys. And it's been great. So Jeff, first of all, I want to thank you for taking some of your time out because I know you always have a busy day. I can ask all my project managers when they're trying to reach out to you, but we do it on. Jeff, how old are you now?
34.
Isn't that funny? Because you've been 30 for 4 years because I met you when you were 30.
Yeah, exactly.
And when did you graduate from high school, Jeff?
Ooh, that's a weird one because when I was younger, my parents took us out of school and I was in just after elementary school and I went into a homeschool program. And so they actually I started my first college classes at 13. It was my summer, so I was almost 14. And then I went to a junior college at the time. It's called St. Pete Junior College. Now it's St. Pete College. They upgraded a little bit. And that's where I got my associates before transferring to UF years later.
Nice. So that's where you get the nickname Boy Genius. But at 34, I'm not sure if I can call you Boy Genius much longer, but I'm still going to do it because I'm still twice your age. But
exactly. I started college early because of smarts. It was more like my parents saw an opportunity. You could be a dual enrollment student as a homeschool and take as many college classes as you want. And it's the best thing I could have done. It just doesn't mean I was any smarter than the average Joe.
That is okay. So we have a couple of rules on the show and there's no lying. One of the things, whenever I talk to anybody in Florida and engineered life safety systems come up in conversation and I'll mention your name, everybody always goes, oh, that guy's a genius. He's a genius. That's nice. The words that always come out of people's mind, which, you know, I wish that was something they said when they heard my name, but unfortunately that's not the term. But no, it's, you know, own it. You were blessed with being very bright, but you also use it for a lot of good. So you've got 2 brothers that you're extremely close to, which I think is also a great dynamic of who you are. You have a wonderful fiance, allegedly, because we've heard about her for years, but no one's ever met her. She's paid 76 in the no, I'm just kidding.
Oh boy.
But you know, someday
well, you'll have to meet her pretty soon, Kelly, because I think I need to prove. She's like, who's Kelly? Why is she calling you? I was like, no, that's not Kelly's a guy.
So Ben Friedman, who's a good friend of ours, who owns City Quiet Glass. I don't know if I've ever told this story before. A few years ago, his wife really, really wanted to meet me because Ben was starting to get a little bit of hot water because text from me. You know, so you are one of many that have had to find out, you know, had to prove who I am. Get out of the doghouse. But you also, you know, my famous golfing video where I'm playing at a golf tournament and you make a comment off screen, which is completely unlike your personality. I've got more backlash for that because they think I was saying it about, and it was something that was it wasn't even true to you. Just said a funny golfing comment about your girlfriend, and everyone thought I was saying it. And oh my God. So anyway, maybe I'll post that video again just so people can see it. Now they'll know the culprit. But it's so unlike you, which just makes it even funnier than it actually was. But anyway, so you got these great brothers. You own you own some houses on the East and West Coast. You guys are really focused and y'all really have a cool bond. But we're here to talk about engineered life safety systems. So for people like Wayne, in the planet that doesn't understand that in the state of Florida. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so like give you the background, right? So really prior to, let's say 1990, it's probably even a little earlier than that. Primarily buildings between 1960s and 80. But buildings before 1990, it wasn't code for residential high rises to get sprinklers at the time of construction, right? After 1990, that changed. And then in 1997, the state of Florida created our first Florida Fire Prevention Code, where we took two national standards, NFPA 1 and NFPA 101, merged them together, made some amendments, and called it the first Florida Fire Prevention Code. In that code, it created a requirement that said all existing high-rise residential buildings had to be provided with full fire sprinklers within 12 years, right? Fundamentally, full fire sprinklers means sprinklers throughout the bedrooms, bathrooms, the closets, everywhere in the building, in accordance with NFPA 13. And then from that point, the challenge is that it's very invasive and remediation work. If you know anything about condominiums, the last thing any board of directors wants to do is send contractors into people's units because it typically creates an upset atmosphere. Let's say that.
Right, it's a nice term.
Yeah,
so the
right.
code eventually adopted in what they allowed is, in lieu of full fire sprinklers, a building could do what's called an engineered life safety system, or short-term ELSS, which is subsequently adopted into legislation. And it says, okay, full fire sprinklers is the safest thing you can do. No one will contest that. But in lieu of that, the state's willing to accept this ELSS, which would be comprised of things like partial fire sprinklers, smoke detection, smoke control, compartmentation, and then I think the fifth one is like other approved systems, which can be, prescriptively based or performance based, different things that an engineer could come up with. So that the intent was then you hire a fire protection engineer or firm, and they come out and they survey the building, and they put together a report that says, hey, here's the deficiencies that we found in the building. It's not an exhaustive list of every deficiency because, that would probably be thousands of pages long. But here's what we found. Here's what the prescriptive code says. And here's the recommendations that we would recommend that you should do in lieu. If you're trying to do the LSS, here's what you should do. And then that report gets submitted to the association. The engineer typically meets with them and reviews it and so forth. And then with approval, they then submit that to the fire department. And that's where the back and forth begins. Fire department comes back and says, hey, I agree with the report. However, you're not addressing this. Or, hey, the report's good, you're approved. And then once they have that approved report, it says, okay, now I have a to-do list of everything that I need to do to comply with this code requirement. And now I have to go out and get it done. And so when this first came out in 2003, it was 1997, and then the ELSS, I think, came out in around 2003. There was a lot of confusion over how many buildings this impacted. And so they developed, I think, in like 2010, the first opt-out that by 2016, you had to opt out of full fire sprinklers. By opting out of full fire sprinklers, you would be opting into ELSS. And at the time, I think the legislation maybe wasn't clear. And for some reason, when they did the opt-out call and they cataloged the number of buildings, the number came back at like 4,300 buildings in the state, right? Which said, man, this is going to be, and the cost of it, because every building varies in size as well as maintenance of how they're taking care of their building. There was no real way to put a thumb on the cost of the ELSS as an average, or the cost of full fire sprinklers on an average, because of the unique architecture of a lot of these buildings spanning many decades. And so what happened was you had this big lobbyist group that said, hey, we don't want to do this. We don't want to do this. In 2016, right after the opt-out and everything had been done, there was maybe even early 2017 at that point, but there was legislation to completely eliminate the ELSS, and it actually passed in the legislative sessions. However, when it was on the governor's desk, what happened was that Grenfell fire in London, right, which was different building codes. It had nothing to do with really America, but it set a precedence where the governor said, I can't in good faith sign this to eliminate this requirement for existing buildings. And so he vetoed it. So the legislation, I think he vetoed it, but I believe there was an extension. No, maybe the initial requirement was you had to have it done by December 31st of 2019, right? So that the Grenfell fire happened. Legislation got vetoed. The next big movement was in the legislative session of 2019. At that time, the argument came up, this is expensive. There's 4,300 buildings in the state. essentially legislation got pushed again that it was going to eliminate it. However, that didn't pass legislation, especially because of the Greenfield fire that happened in the past years. And so they ended up agreeing on an extension to the 2024 deadline. But Governor DeSantis, who was the governor at that time, said, hey, this seems to be a conceptual argument, which no one really has the real figures on. He tasked then the state fire marshal to do a call of information where he reached out to every jurisdiction in the state. And he said, I need, Mr. Fire Marshal for such and such jurisdiction, provide me with a list of the buildings that are not in compliance with this and need to be in compliance with this, as well as the buildings that have already complied or the buildings that are underway, and keep providing this list. And then the state fire marshal's office received all these lists from various fire departments, compiled them together into one state fire marshal's report that was published in September of 2020. And in that report, it said, okay, based on the research and based on the call of information, the number of buildings affected in the state was, I think it's just under or just over 800, right? So there was 4,300 buildings that were originally anticipated. Now it's only 800. Well, where did the big change come? The big change came because the original legislation wasn't clear on whether it was 75 foot, right? Because the two primary factors for an ELSS or a full sprinkler requirement is the building, is it 75 feet or greater to the highest occupied floor? And if that is the case, then yeah, you may fall into the ELSS category. The second one is, do you have open air catwalks or enclosed corridors? And really it says wherever unit has access, the front door of your unit, if it's opening to an exterior space, you can travel to exterior stairs, and then you can go down and be out of the building without having to pass through an internal space. You would be exempt from this requirement. And I think what they found was a lot of those 4,300, especially when you go to the West Coast, you see that was the typical building status. They did a lot of those open air catwalks rather than what we see in like Fort Lauderdale, Miami with the internal corridors. And so that's where this number dwindled, right? And additionally, there was a lot of unclearness over the 75 foot. So there's a lot of 3- and 4-story buildings that opted out. This didn't apply to in the beginning. So that's how we got that 800, right? And so from that, now it's been a little bit better because now every building has clarity on whether they're being, I wouldn't say targeted, but if they're on this list, then they know this is something they have to deal with, right? Right now, the current deadline, so when Governor DeSantis did that last extension and requested that call of information, he pushed it to having the system installed and completed by December 31st of 2024. So right now, any building that's sitting here, based current legislation, you would be required to have your report done, your drawings permitted, your contractor installing the system, and be completed by the end of this year. I think what's going on right now is the state fire marshal has proposed, and I think it's getting adopted into legislation. It's an amendment to the Florida Fire Prevention Code that will give one more extension that will give buildings up till 2026 to get their report, 2027 to have permits, and I believe, or 2020, end of 2025 to have their report, end of 2026 to have their permits, and then 2027 to be completed with the work.
Well,
and
just to be saying that has not been adopted yet, so let's not confuse anybody. We know what the law is. That could be happening, but it is Tallahassee, so let's not
exactly.
Let's not get Wayne in trouble.
Yeah, I think the logic there is that you had the Surfside event happen, so condos are budgeting. So I think it was just an extension to help better do this. Now it hasn't been adopted. I haven't seen anything in the legislative session yet. I think we would see that in July. What I tell all of our buildings now is if you haven't started, you should at least look at starting your plan, getting your report done. And I would right now follow legislation closely, because if it doesn't get extended after this 2024 window, the fire department does not have to accept an ELSS. It now becomes a full fire sprinkler requirement. Now, there may be some jurisdictions that may still accept that, and that's at the fire department's discretion. But from a state perspective, if you didn't get it done by the end of this year, you're now in the full fire sprinkler window, and there's no alternative to that.
And with plain speak, that means it's a lot less expensive, but very safe to do an ELSS system as opposed to fully sprinkling the building. Just for anybody who doesn't understand, because Jeff, you just described, and everything you described with dates and facts and all that stuff is why they call you a genius. Because it is a lot to understand. It's huge, and it drives me crazy. I have experienced buildings that have caught on fire and people have perished. And I'm sorry. No, I don't like spending money on things I don't want to spend money on. But when it's protecting your building to stay standing or to protect it against fires, you just got to do it. And let's do it the smartest way. And that's where ELSS really comes into play. I think Wayne is chomping at the bit to ask a question. So Wayne, please.
Well, no, I mean, actually, it's a question for both of you. So when Surfside happened, one of my biggest takeaways after that was there's going to be a huge shakeout for people that own condominiums, especially, on the beach. A lot of the assessments that are going to be needed for what we're talking about in what some of the legislation that came out of Surfside, it's going to price a lot of people out of the market. They're going to have to sell their condos. And I see a lot of big money coming in. They're going to be, a lot of them are probably going to even raise the condos and then they're going to sell them as brand new. And really, that definitely is going to rub out for sure the middle class, the upper middle class might even be lucky to buy one, but the rich are going to own the coasts. Is that correct? Both of you guys, what do you have to say on that?
I'm going to say the rich have always owned the coast. That's
Yeah.
why
Yeah.
I live 2 blocks off the coast. But
Right.
it's interesting when you said that. Because when it all went down, literally, I thought there was going to be a mass exodus of people selling their condos. There wasn't. Now you're seeing where some people, because as an owner's rep, which I'm sure Jeff would say, if you're going to do an ELSS or anything else major to your building, you ought to talk to Kelly and LGC. But little plug there. I don't do that too often, but why not? So, but surprisingly, I haven't seen as much flipping as I thought I would see. But yeah, it is having an impact, and I know, and we're going to see more as time goes on, because a lot of your, I'm going to call them smarter communities, jumped on all this stuff and has been moving forward. Jeff mentioned there was a lobbying group for a substantial time that was trying to avoid it, which I thought, to me, I just thought it was terrible. I thought that was the most horrid lobbying group you could ever have, besides like promoting smoking or things like that matter. But the fact that there was a lobbying group that was lobbying against protecting your building, and it was because of this. Yep. You know what? This means nothing when you're 6 feet under. And I don't want to be responsible for other people being 6 feet under either. I mean, that's one of the things I love about what Jeff does, is because it really truly is. It's changing people. It's protecting people. And when you want to go to somebody to get something done, some people actually looking for someone to get them through what can you do to just let this thing slide through? And then there's people like Jeff that's going in, and because the buildings, the communities have decided we want to make this safe for our friends and neighbors. So I'll get off my preacher stand right there.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's important to note, like, the full fire sprinklers is the safest thing, right? But the ELSS, the intent is to say, like, okay, well, your unit's not going to be provided with full fire sprinklers. You'll have a sprinkler head over the door to help compartmentalize the fire to the unit of origin. But that's why you also have the sprinklers in the common corridors. That's why you have something like stair pressurization to say, hey, your fire is your fire. Your reason is to get out. But we need to make enhancements to the building's life safety so that way neighbors have a safer means of getting, in the event, the unit to the next of you is on fire, that you can get to your corridors, you can get to your stairwell, and you can get safely out of the building. And what life safety upgrades can help accommodate that.
Excellent. Speaking of life safety, today we're sponsored by Callaway. They provide my golf clubs and all my other stuff. Even my pants are Callaway. Also, Rockin Wellness. We want to go ahead and mention Rockin Wellness today. We actually had Allison on the show a couple of weeks ago, and hopefully some of y'all have taken the challenge to make yourself healthy. This is what 60 looks like on Rockin Wellness. 60. 60. And it's great for hair growth. Wayne doesn't use it yet. So, we all know about LGC. I always need to get those plugs. And of course, SLS is not, I say you're our sponsor, but everybody knows that all my sponsors are pretend. But they are companies that I think they're great companies, and Wayne thinks they're a good company. So would they get on there? But by no means has Jeff been paid, or have we been paid to have Jeff on the show. I love doing it with asterisks because I just think it's goofy, but it's true. So we got another hour to go. So Jeff, gonna make any big purchases soon? Resort? Like, I'm just kidding. I'm not going to do this to you on the show.
Nothing I can think of right now. Well, probably a car in the near future. I think I'm pushing just over 200,000 on my car from 2017. I put a lot of miles on the road. I got a car in 2017. I think I've averaged about 60,000 miles a year. So,
dude, I'm the same as you. I'm still driving my Mazda CX-5, 2016, and I have about 160,000 miles on it. And literally, I've never done this before, but I've always wanted to. I'm going to try and run the thing into the ground. You always hear people say that. I'm going to try that and see if it can be done.
Okay,
so I just want to do it because I can.
But okay, let's. Boy genius, stupid old guy. I drive a new Volvo. Why do I drive a new Volvo?
Because you're pretentious as hell.
Because
are we live?
It is safe as can be, and I can't hit something if I wanted to. It's unbelievable. My ex-wife is safe.
Oh my god.
No, but seriously, I'm at Home Depot yesterday. Home Depot. So, great company. I don't know if you know about Home Depot, but I tell you what, if you ever need anything, Jeff, it's a great place to buy things. So yesterday I was running out doing some errands at lunchtime, and I had to go get something at Home Depot. Place is packed, and the sensors are blowing up when I'm trying to park because it says I'm getting too close to the car next to me. I finally had to go and park somewhere else just because those stupid sensors are just really annoying. But
well, I thought you liked that car so much.
That sounded a little feminine. But can I grab you? No. I'm trying not to say Bud Light during the entire show. How am I doing? We're
apolitical. We are apolitical.
Can we get your Bud Light there, Wayne? So
okay, Pumpkin.
Nobody watches the end of the show. They make it 5 minutes and then they're off. So
good point.
So, but what was my point was it was I live in a very high, our island, I guess, was built up, our barrier island I live on. We weren't affected too much by all that torrential rain down here that Fort Lauderdale really got pummeled with, and Davie and down to Miami. But the reason I figured the Home Depot was so packed yesterday, and it was it was just the world was in there on a Tuesday at lunchtime, or the Tuesday? Yeah, Tuesday. Because of people trying to repair all the stuff. I've heard horror stories of what happened to people's houses, and which really stinks. But fortunately, our governor did do a state emergency for Broward County, and hopefully all of our friends are going to get through it. Some of our personal friends actually were affected, which really stinks. But that's I'm trying to lighten it up because what we were talking about was very, very businessy, and we want to kind of make it fun too. But if anybody has any questions, Jeffrey Marcic, you can see his name. It's been up there the whole time. Just find him on LinkedIn. You're on LinkedIn, right?
Yep, LinkedIn.
One of our sponsors. And reach out to him. He's extremely busy, but he'll try to clean out some time to get with you and your board to discuss what you need or may not need to do for your building. I talk to a lot of people, and it turns out they don't need us. Talk to a lot of other ones that do. But it's extremely important. This is a time-sensitive subject. At some point, Jeffrey's going to have to find a new job. It's getting...
Actually, I think ELSS is ironically probably it's a sizable portion of what we do, of what I do. But our company as a whole, we do a lot of new construction. We're probably primarily 95% new construction, right?
Okay.
So that's, and then for existing buildings, I do a lot with, you have an old fire alarm, even if you're fully fire sprinklered, right? You need to replace your fire alarm. So we do a lot of fire alarm consulting, general life safety consulting. I have buildings that are going through concrete restorations, and they need to do phasing plans or life safety plans to better show the fire department. And so I would say a lot of my work is miscellaneous. If it has fire protection and life safety somewhere tied to it, we're usually there to help. The other big one that comes up a lot is the BDA. It stands for bidirectional amplifier, but it really is part of what's an emergency responder radio communication compliance. and it says that fire departments and police need to have walkie-talkies that work throughout your building, right? And walkie-talkies don't work peer-to-peer typically, or they have that capability, but they typically transmit off-site to a central station where the message is recorded and then rebroadcasted back. The issue becomes that the construction of the building limits the signal from getting in or getting out, and so the radios don't work. And so kind of in tandem with the ELSS, although separate, there's a requirement for buildings to get tested for emergency responder coverage. And if they fail, to go out and permit it and get it installed, I believe by January 1st, 2025 is when the installation needs to be complete.
Have you been over to Hard Rock? Because I was over there last night to see Billy Idol. Woo, Rebel Yell. And my buddy Greg Orndorff up in Virginia called, and he called me a few times and I couldn't respond. I had to text him saying, dude, this place, it kills your phone. I wonder if they do that because it's a casino and they don't want people on their cell phone.
I would bet you there's something like jammers in there. Because typically even them, I would, like we do for life safety, the bidirectional amplifiers, but these are nothing different than a radio repeater system, right? Cellular signal is a radio signal. And so like you could do that with life safety and the fire department's radios, like Sprint, Verizon, and all those other companies. You can put enhancement systems with their little chips in it that will enhance the coverage. And if Hard Rock doesn't have that, that's probably because it has something to do with, like I've read even Home Depot will have jammers in there because they don't want you price checking Lowe's as you're sitting in the aisle, because I think a lot of these guys have agreements. If you read the fine print, that says if you find a price lower, we'll match that price. And so there are certain clients that will sit there and they will find everything cheaper and then show up at the front and get all of those discounts.
Right. Well, casinos don't have clocks in them either.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Well, I do know that in the midnight hour, she cried more.
Nice reference. I tell you what, I saw Billy Idol like 30 years ago, and I've seen him twice back in those days, right?
Love him.
I remember we went to the 930 Club in DC, which isn't a very big place, and we're like right up on the stage. And this guy looked like death warmed over, but he sang. No, we know. He's just got that freaking voice that's just powerful.
Dude, he's the best, man. He is the best.
He was all of it. So then go see him last night. The guy looks better today at 67 than he did when he was in his 30s. It was cracking me up. But, and his voice is still great, but it isn't as it wasn't as insane, and it could be the sound quality and blah blah blah. Although Hard Rock's a great place to hear a band. Especially somebody of his magnitude, because it's I don't want to say it's an intimate setting, but I think there's only like 4,000 seats. But he's rocking. I mean, he still has got it going on. But
dude, what's the name of Billy Idol's first band? Yeah, you don't know, do you?
Billy Big Fan before he became
Generation X. Generation X.
Really? Was that? And that was before Gen Xers, wasn't it?
Well, I mean, that's my generation. You're an old fading baby boomer. Jeffrey is an up and coming millennial. So we got room for everybody on this podcast. We got 3 generations right here, brother.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm the last year of the baby boomer.
Whatever. You're still a baby boomer.
You're still just a couple years behind me, punk.
Yeah, you still think the Beatles are the greatest and the Rolling Stones and CCR. Just kill me now, brother.
Beatles. Hey, listen, CCR for the limited years that they performed. Come on.
Dude, you're showing your age right now. Jeff, what's your favorite go-to group? Bring some of the youth into this call, will you please?
Oh, man.
Doors.
That's a tough one. I'm one of those, I don't want to say weirdos, but I listen to like a lot of like audiobooks. And then one of my music is I got into this in college because I read something that classical music helps the brain when studying. So I got into, there's a woman that goes by the name of Lindsay Sterling, right? And she's like a modern version violinist. You've seen her. She was on America's Got Talent years ago. And she plays this violin, and almost like an electric violin, but phenomenal. And then she had a crowd. She was at the Sunset Music Festival a couple of years ago here. And I was surprised how many other people are like, listen to her intensely.
Dude, I've seen her. I haven't seen her in concert, but I've seen YouTube videos on exactly who you're talking about. Pretty cool, pretty quirky. I like it.
Yeah. Her music's great because it just it has a rhythm to it, and it's very modern. It doesn't sound like old school classical,
Right.
No, it's phenomenal. It really, that's a whole new level when you when you throw electric into the violin,
Right.
it's a powerful instrument. Yeah.
Yep.
So that's pretty geeky though. That's what you said though.
I love it, man.
I'm just
I
glad
love
you didn't say Taylor Swift.
Oh boy.
That's my girl. No. And then I do a lot of like audiobooks. It's weird. But I really never listened to them until about 5-6 years ago. And now I've probably been through 100 books in the last, 4 years, probably about 20
That's
books.
because you're like me. You're on the road all the time, man. Audiobooks, the podcasts, I hear you. You can only go to your go-to playlist so many times. You got to shake it up.
What's your favorite
Yeah,
podcast? Shake It Up. He's doing all these Idol references.
The Cars. Well, no, the Shake It Up.
Well, that Shake It Up is the Cars. Never mind.
Easy Beatles.
Shake
Easy.
It. No,
Paul
he's got
McCartney.
Shake It Up in one of his songs too. I heard it last night.
All right.
Yeah, it's not Shake It Up, Baby, but there is Shake It Up, Shake. Yeah, he does.
Oh,
Hey,
yeah.
write it in if you don't believe me. It's true.
I know my Billy Idol. You're right.
Oh, okay. One more little story. So last night,
All right.
sitting to my right, people doing shrooms.
That's
And
awesome.
first, there's a guy
That's
sitting
Rudolph?
next to me, and he goes, "I'm the designated driver. I'm just drinking." And I'm like, "Holy smokes!" And the people in front of super nice people from over in Naples, right? Real two couples, super nice. But then you got these people next to us, and then the guy leaves, and the two girls are left, and the girls moved over towards me, and she's talking to me. And she's talking like this. And it reminded me of that hysterically funny factual movie, The Wolf of Wall Street. Remember we were talking about, this is what happened in my house, and I just wrecked and And then they show what really happened.
Yeah.
That's how she was talking. I've heard about shrooms. I've never would partake in anything that would make me lose control at all. So that's, but it was very Billy Idolish, because isn't that something from the 80s? People doing shrooms? Is that something?
I think it's something still going on in 2023. Maybe like
it was last night. I know that. But
well, there you go. It's still out there.
I remember reading something in the last year about how Silicon Valley is like really. I mean, they're looking at it as like an alternative. I guess because there's a term they use, like microdosing, where you don't take enough to where you're losing control, but they use it as a substitute.
Be microdosing.
Yeah, they use it for like a substitute of Adderall. And I was reading, it was like a big thing in Silicon Valley in California right now, where all these tech startups, these guys go to work high pretty much, right? Like,
great, they're building the future.
Jeez. Wow, yeah, that's why I don't want marijuana laws being passed in this country. I think people in this country, they need to exercise, eat right, and stop doing all this freaking crap. I mean,
and like Nancy Reagan said, just say no.
She has a nutcase, but I agree with her on that one. Wow, it's sad. It really is sad that people they think it's okay. But I just never experienced in my 60 years of living of somebody doing that. And then for her to actually talk to me like that, I so badly just wanted to start recording her and just, save it. But it was life-changing. I'm like, gee, I don't think I'll ever try that now.
Sounds like
I really was considering it
for me, but
it was bizarre. I love the 80s. I still dress like I'm in the 80s. I love the music. But I'll never, I don't think we're becoming better human beings by ingesting any type of crazy drugs. So that's my, get your building checked out, make sure it's safe, and don't do drugs like Nancy said. Nancy and Wayne.
Yep.
Exactly.
Hey, buddy, we appreciate you on the show. I think I covered a lot of our sponsors, except for, of course, M2E, WRG, but our favorite, LGC. Oh, and if you get in trouble, Becker Law. So, and Dawn Miller, we just want to say hi. She's the paving lady, and we try to mention her every show. So, Jeff, thanks coming on. Thanks for golfing with us last Friday. He did make me pay him to be on the show. I had to take him out golfing. I took him to Trump Doral. Very nice time. But so now I guess I owe Wayne a golf round too. So have a great rest of the week. I appreciate your time. Everybody have a wonderful day. And remember, go to LinkedIn. Link in with all of us. If you see me, you already are LinkedIn, right?
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
Thanks, Jeff. Appreciate you, my man.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys. Have a great
Take it
day.
easy.